Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque Sustainable Hygiene Solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.
Okay, I am here with Josh Kern. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
All right, so what's going on with SPB Hospitality?
Wow, lots of things. We're down to 7 brands. I think the last time we talked, I think we had 12 or 14. We kind of peeled off Rock Bottom and Gordon Biersch, and so trying to focus on the other remaining brands that we have. And just a lot of activity going from QSR all the way up to polished casual. So never a dull moment for sure.
Mm-hmm. I want to start off a little bit with Krystal. How is that brand doing?
Much better. When we inherited it, it was a mess. I mean, it had everything that was possibly could go wrong or had been going wrong. It was just kind of all over the place. So it's turned the corner. We're in some positive territory with traffic, which is phenomenal for that brand. Consumers will not let it die. I mean, it's 93 years old. And so, we just really focus on the basics, getting those drive-through. I think about 83% of the business is through the drive-through. So clearly we need to focus on that and get those cars turning faster and faster. So that's really what we've been after, and got the great leader in there. Amanda Hyde is spectacular. She really, has that tough love mentality where they needed kind of that, come together and just really concentrate on that middle of the P&L and just get stuff done. That's the most important part.
Yeah. So you were doing AI in the drive-through there, weren't you?
I mean, we looked at it. Our friends at White Castle use it.
Yeah,
so we've definitely been to an awful lot of concepts checking it out. I think it's a little too premature for Krystal. We're definitely looking at, we've got more digital menu boards where we can change those and optimize them faster, whether it's an LTO or pricing. But some of the AI at, the voice interaction, it's still, to me, a little clunky. But everything that we've done on the digital boards, we could integrate it. So as technology gets better, and it's getting, better every 5 minutes, I'm sure we'll get down to that, because it is, can save some labor, but it's just, you still have to opt into it when you pull up to the drive-through, and we're cautiously waiting to see what happens out there.
Yeah, well, my general thought on AI in the drive-through, and I think it's inevitable. I mean, in a lot of companies,
Absolutely.
I don't think every company should do it, but I think it's inevitable for a lot of brands. But I also think that a lot of the companies that went into it really fast probably should not have.
I would agree.
And did it for probably the wrong reasons.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I mean, it's coming.
Right.
I just think it warranted more caution than what you saw certainly a couple of years ago.
I agree. Well, and just to see some of the TikTok, content that's out there, people trying to trick it. I mean, it just become, and it is. I mean, getting that voice inflection, especially with all the, the different dialects that are out there. So, but yeah, I agree with you.
So tell me why will consumers not let Krystal die?
I mean, it is a unique flavor profile, right? I mean, White Castle, Krystal, or it is those steamed kind of sliders are just very popular. It's also the price point. I mean, in this day and age, value is still the king, and so I think that plays a huge part of it. But when I talk to guests, it definitely is a nostalgia thing. So that I brought my kids there, and I went with my dad or my grandfather. So I still think it has that kind of permeated all around that southern band. And so I think a lot of people just really know it and just love it for that reason. And you can get a lot of them, right? It's a sack full of sliders, and for not a lot of bucks. And so that's a huge piece of it. And it is craveable. I mean, like I said, it's definitely something that you just can't get anywhere else. And when you get them hot and right out of the drive-through, I mean, it is a delicious product. And so I think that's part of what it's all about. It's interesting in terms of just who comes into the restaurants as well. I mean, you've got a kind of the younger generation that's coming in late night. You've got the older generation that's still hitting it for lunch, and then breakfast has been a good day part for us. So I think people on the go, getting back into offices, getting back on the into the commutes, being able to grab a small slider, and we have fresh cracked eggs, and that's important. We use tallow. We've been doing it since we tried to go back to see how long we've been using it. I know it's over 70 years, so it's never changed. There was a test that took place 10 years ago or so, but it's always been tallow, and so we have not talked about that a lot. I know that's kind of the rage these days, but it is something we'll continue to explore and just go down that path.
So you're still not really talking about it?
No, we haven't. We need to push it out there. I mean, it's been one of those things. It felt a little Me Too-ish to do it right out of the gates with RFK Jr. and but it's still it's still perpetuating. It's still getting some traction out there. The one thing I didn't like about some of the competition out there was, yeah, you're using tallow, but you're still using processed foods when it's going into those fryers, and there's still oils that were probably in that. So once we get to an all-natural fry, we'll talk to it a little bit more. But we still have some of the stuff that's to keep those shelf lives longer. You gotta go down those preservatives. So if we can get a better fry without changing the taste too much for our consumers, then we'll talk a little bit more about it for sure.
Yeah. I think it's a it's a challenging. I mean, like we've seen, like Steak and Shake has been marketing the heck out of it, but it didn't take people too long. Once you start looking, you start pushing out your ingredients, and then you're going to have people that are going to start looking under the hood.
100%.
And it doesn't take very long for them to find out what's going on, and then you're going to get a backlash, which is exactly what happened there.
Yeah. And as a marketing guy through my career, and it's you have to be authentic with the brand, and that's probably what makes Krystal kind of interesting. Is it's been true to its roots for forever, and so that's important to just be transparent, be honest, and tell people what's in this thing for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what did you do to you said to fix the brand? Tell me what you guys did.
It sounds simple, but it was just focusing on the basics, making sure that the drive-throughs are open, that we're staffed appropriately, that we're retraining the teams that are out there. Really watch, hey, how long are we cooking these sliders? There was an initiative that we inherited where they were hot holding them, and that's just with a Krystal product, it's just not going to be. That's no bueno. It's not going to go out the gates very well. So really just kind of concentrating on that front, and then just leadership, getting the right person there to really lead and inspire the people first. I mean, that's really what we've got to. Krystal's always been a wink and a smile, and you've got to make sure that you've got some people that are that believe in the brand. And I think for quite some time, it was just kind of, left kind of rudderless, and it just needed kind of, hey, weekly calls, inspiring the troops, getting out there in the restaurants, doing all those basics, and then just getting rid of kind of stuff that was layered upon, whether it was a previous, PE firm that came in or this initiative. There was really, things would start and then nothing else would happen from that. So there's just some stuff to clean up for sure. Dining rooms weren't really reopened from COVID, and that was ridiculous. And so just really focusing on that. We just start talking about ingredients a little bit more. So fresh cracked eggs at a time when eggs were super expensive, but I think it was just leaning into those basics. But it did start with getting the right person to really inspire each of the district operators, and then focusing on GMs and those managers, and then getting the hiring process back on track.
Right. So it is simple, but the fact of the matter is that like the basics work.
They matter.
They absolutely matter. You can, I can rattle off a list of chains that are doing really well and they get the basics correct.
Right.
And I can rattle off another list of chains that don't get the basics correct and they're having problems. And it really is at the end of the day, like you can run really good restaurants and things happen, and
100%
and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is your best bet at long-term success.
Yep.
At the end of people notice, especially these days when they're cutting back, they want a good experience.
Big time. And limiting those numbers of initiatives. I think that's we've got this row right down here on the technology side. And I think, as chains started to look at all those kind of degrees of technology, you start bolting these things in, but then you're forgetting, okay, well, one change, it's going to impact at the unit level, and that's going to be a distraction. That's going to be something that's out there. So we've tried to really not put in a lot of new stuff or new widgets. Clearly, we want to look and see what's out there. But we've tried to be disciplined enough to just keep that off everyone's plates, and then focus some things at our shared services level. If there's some tools that will help, that won't impact the restaurants, that's seamless, that's fine. But again, keeping the stuff off, they've got enough to do. And in this day and age, I mean, crime is certainly up in a lot of different markets. We've had a lot of drive-throughs that are just, smash and grabs to try and get some cash. It's not pleasant out there at times. So have to be cognizant of that.
Mm-hmm. So you went from what you said about 13 brands now to about 7. Why did you make that decision?
We've been trying to just skinny up the portfolio. I think we've talked in the past. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's so many different brands, and then you're kind of going from from QSR up to casual. We had breweries. I think it's again just trying to kind of watch what we're doing, how we're navigating, so that a shared services team can really work. And we've also added with Amada, with Chef Jose Garces, a new arm of the company where we're really looking at new concepts. So, Amada has 3 locations. We've actually, we're coming here in November for the 4th location. And then we're starting a new concept. So we're looking at that kind of, Mexican polished, think Mexican sugar or, some of those brands. And so we're looking at some new concepts that just makes SPB a little bit more sexy, if you will, in terms of those brands. And so that's been something that we're starting to concentrate. And we really like the polished casual category. And so, taking what we know about J. Alexander's and Stony River and that fine kind of hospitality and training, and then apply that into a Mexican concept, we think that's a home run, and get a little bit higher of a price point in an environment that's a little more upscale and fun and bar-centric. And so that's what we're looking to do. And, I think what we're really good at is growing brands. So then, getting to scale, using our economies in terms of shared service, but then allow Chef Jose Garces to come up with some new concepts, incubate those, grow them, and then add those to the portfolio. And we're always looking, to, with some of our legacy, brands, it might be time to, to talk to, the bankers that are out there and see if it's, one can go on its own or, make a strategic divestiture that way. So that's kind of what we're up to.
So how do you, I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, but how do you go from, because you've got like a 100-year-old brand here and a bunch of legacy brands, and now over here you're, creating and forming new concepts. How do you, as a company that runs all of these established brands, shift into this creation/growth mode? I don't think that's always easy.
No. It's really difficult. And what I've learned is it's on the people side. Like there are just folks that when it comes to innovation or doing something new, it's hard. It's hard for them because and they may be doing something that, with a brand for, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, but doing something new, it does take a different type of a person. And that's why these emerging brands and why you've got leaders that are kind of focused on that. And then there's some sort of transaction. I mean, makes perfect sense, right? To kind of have that specialty. So it's a challenge. It's just something that I believe that we need to do and really be able to kind of take what we know from those legacy brands and then apply it to these new brands when it comes to things that we know. And certainly training, learning and development, scratch-made kitchens. I mean, use all of those things, our food cost, controls, labor, and then really go after something that is, new to the market. So it's not easy. You're right, and it definitely takes a different type of cat to, to get in there and really understand that. And that's what I'm on the lookout for. Actually, at the show is meeting with some folks that we might be able to add to the team that really understand, where we can take this company in the future.
Right. I think it's really difficult to take, we see some companies out there that even you have a really large company buying a small one and expecting that small one to grow or trying to create something. That's not something, just because you run a really good brand and you doesn't necessarily mean you can actually create another one from the ground up.
100%.
That is two different, that's actually two different skill sets.
Yep. 100%. And the other side, when we've been on the M&A activity. And so even when we bringing in something that's relatively small, with Amada, I mean, that's really difficult. And you talk about, you got pull through culture. You have to understand the menu, the people, the region of the country that you might be in. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics on just that side, and then plugging in all of these different apertures, to become a shared services entity, whether it's accounting or your IT systems and, how you're tracking sales. I mean, all of those things are difficult, and every one of those things is a distraction to the team. You may be working on Logan's, but you're always going to hear the teams that are over here working on the next new thing. And like any company, if there's something new, people tend to gravitate towards that direction. So the discipline is to kind of keep, all right, look, we've still got to turn around for Krystal. We're still, coming out. I'm not ready to declare victory for Logan's, but man, Logan's is on a tear, and I think there's some good things that have happened in for it. It's a value centric steakhouse. I think some of the competitors have stumbled. We certainly have the juggernaut and who to that we always have to keep an eye on. But Logan's is doing much better. And again, we focused on quality and just service. I mean, that's really what we went after. We didn't have great sirloins in Logan's 4 years, 4 years ago. And now we've just dedicated how we're going to cook these things, how we're going to get the right vendor partner to make sure these are quality steaks at a price that we can afford. And that certainly is still the name of the game. It's getting more and more difficult. I mean, just across the way, we were meeting with some vendor partners on protein. So steak is just, it's skyrocketing, and there's a lot of pressure in that category. So, eggs go down a little bit, and then the next thing, it's the proverbial finger in the dam. There's always something that's coming out there, but that's really what we're checking out.
Yeah, beef is the problem with beef. Like with eggs or with chicken. I mean, you get a spike in those prices, you just wait a couple of months and things will be fixed.
Yeah, the herd.
Beef, you're gonna wait a while.
Heck yeah. Yep.
But the other thing I think though with steak though is that the consumer loves it.
Mm-hmm.
I adore steak. It's literally one of my favorite things to eat. Yep. When I go out for a celebratory occasion, I am in fact, for my birthday, we went out and got steak. That's nice. Exactly.
Are you a ribeye guy or a New York strip? What's your favorite cut?
I really like New York strip.
Yeah.
But I'm, I eat all kinds of beef from hamburger to steak to smoking brisket. I'm a big fan of beef.
Nice.
And prime rib is one of my smoked prime rib is absolutely one of my favorite
Making
things
me hungry.
on the planet. I'm relatively agnostic, but and I am personally willing to pay up for it on a celebratory occasion.
Right.
And that requires quality.
Big time. Well, and there's so much pressure in proteins right now. I mean, you have GLP-1s, people's diets are still kind of in that protein centric. So, I mean, it's going to only continue to have pressure out there. And you're right to get these herds from the entire process, it takes a lot of time. For sure. And we, even the, kind of what's happening in the tariff world. I mean, we looked at late last year, beef from Australia, from Uruguay, and we did some cuttings against it. I mean, there's definitely a size difference when you see the Uruguayan, meat coming in. It's much more lean. I didn't get a gamey, taste on it. Some picked it up on the Australian side, but of course now with all the pressure, I mean, we're not even entertaining, looking at that route because it's going to be more expensive. And I'm just, probably in the country where we sit today, if that got out that you somehow changed to, foreign product, it's just not going to be something that's digestible from a consumer standpoint. So we backed off that for sure.
Right. So what kind of things did you do for Logan's since you took it over?
Logan's was, with all those steaks that we're serving out there, I mean, making sure they're cooked to order 100% of the time has been the goal. So we've got the person that's the most important, role at Logan's is on that grill, putting that meat to the fire and making sure they're cooked to temperature. And so we really focused just around that and making sure that, hey, when you want a medium rare, it's truly medium rare. It's crazy about Logan's. Most steaks going out are well done these days. I don't know if it's just that consumer line that comes into Logan's. I know it's a weird thing to me as well, but it's an oddity. But certainly focusing on that central cast member has been critical for us, and elevating food quality. Really getting in there from a culinary standpoint has been the name of the game. And Logan's like, I mean, our guests like some LTOs, and looking at things like brisket. We've elevated our mac and cheese and some of the sides that are on there. We have a nice meal deal bundle that's out there for $11.99, and those things they just work all day long. And so for us, it was again just really taking those GMs, over communicating, not putting a lot on them. 3 years ago, before I came into this role, we changed our broadline distributors. We've had a new system on inventory, all of this happening at once. And that's a recipe, like we talked about before, for disaster. Just no one can focus on servicing that guest. The best thing coming out of COVID was, on that note, was we don't have peanuts anymore. So the big barrels are gone. You don't have the shells on the floor. I mean, it gets kind of gross even, before everything was happening. So it's definitely, and now we were giving away because we have free rolls. You add the peanuts to that, it was like $3 million hit to the P&L before you even, finish your budgets that year. So, so I think that's kind of helped. It makes the restaurants look cleaner. If you ever had a peanut allergy, we're never coming into a Logan's. And,
right.
And so I think that a combination of those things. And it's ready for the next generation. I think that now we can continue to look at that menu. It's probably a little bit big. We're testing some things and getting a little bit more of a focused menu that's in a couple different markets. And we've opened a couple new ones. We just came in outside of Columbus, Ohio, about a month and a half ago or so. Smaller footprint, and so we've been pleased with how it's performing. And so, new Logan's locations do well. It's the older ones that in that legacy arena where, state and Maine has shifted in a lot of different cities that we operated in. So we've done a nice job in the portfolio and probably closing the ones that were just, not going to be able to turn. And certainly, when Texas Roadhouse comes in, we got to watch what we're doing and how we play in that arena. And, sometimes we do pretty good and sometimes we don't. And so we have to watch kind of where the development footprint goes every day.
Yeah. So, have you found are you going to, is a plan ultimately to sell some of your concepts or one of your concepts or something like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was always the thesis with our friends at Fortress. Great partners. I mean, they really have they've got the checkbook open. So, we present them with opportunities that are out there in the marketplace. So we get, a lot of things coming across our desk. They get a lot of interesting items. They're in the debt market, and they probably have, 35-40% of all restaurant debt in the country. And so they get a lot of things. What we've tried to do is stay away from distressed, and try and find up and coming. We would love to find a polished casual concept that is broken out of its home market and could be anywhere from 5 to 15 units. And then, like I said earlier, then we can really, I do have a fantastic team that can look at sites, get these things open, built on time, on budget, and really kind of grow on that side. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely, we've been talking to some folks about, further brands and kind of, seeing what's out there. And some of them are ready to go. I mean, we've done what we could do what we could do from a turnaround standpoint. And now it probably needs, a different way to look at it and probably a standalone. I mean, you think of like a brand like Logan's, for example, does it benefit from shared services? Yes. Could it be better as a standalone? You could argue that point, and fresh capital and new eyes. That might be something that's interesting. So yeah, I think we're always looking for sure.
So you might sell some and then buy some here and
Correct.
then create some here. Is that the plan?
Yep, that's the plan.
Right.
Yeah, because there's it. We wanted to kind of keep the engine groom and moving along, because there's certainly that opportunity for new concepts and learning what we know. That's why we've been looking at some new stuff or creating our own. And then we could do the same thing, right? Break it out of its home market, and maybe it sells early. And so that's something that we're passionate about for sure.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So in the last few years, we've seen a number of companies dip their toe into into becoming a multi-concept brand. Like Jack in the Box bought Del Taco,
Yep.
and now Jack in the Box is selling Del Taco.
Yep.
And it seems like either the company, in maybe Jack in the Box's case, maybe, you could say maybe Del Taco just wasn't the right fit or whatever. But it just seems like we have, a few years ago, we had a rapid growth in this consolidation. And many of us, including me, were saying we're going to see a lot of consolidation in this industry. And now we're sort of, it's almost like it's going back in the opposite direction where brands have said, well, we can't do this. And it seems like, at least in the restaurant space, it's a lot more challenging to operate multiple brands under the same roof than I think people really appreciate. What's the challenge in terms of operating multiple brands, and what's the secret to making it work?
I mean, I think the big secret to our success for SPB is truly utilizing and getting the advantage of shared services. I didn't put in brand presidents. There's definitely folks that are, more aligned to a brand or a division, but there's certainly more cross-pollinating at kind of restaurant support center. So I think embracing kind of the efficiencies that you can really gather without homogenizing those brands, right? You still have a brand positioning for all of these different brands, but you can utilize those shared services and resources so that you're increasing unit level profitability. If you just build silo upon silo, I think that's where some of these different organizations have just lost their way, because then G&A becomes a huge drag. That's gonna be the first thing that any investment proposition is going to look at, is, hey, slice that, and then you're getting super skinny in some different areas. So I think that's one big part of it. But then I do think that you've got to appreciate brands. Like you cannot commingle too much. And I could probably name a couple of different examples where if you do that, it's a recipe for disaster. And so I think that those are two big components that certainly are out there. And then the upside is going through almost methodically vendors. I mean, you think about one brand probably has takeout facilities, 30 different, vendors that are part of it. And then are you truly getting what you paid for these different companies that are out there? And if you don't stop and really take a look at all of those things, then that $35 a month times 16 different widgets that are out there, you're never going to make any money at the unit level. And then you're not going to make any investor happy with what's happening. So that certainly is a big part of it. But it's a very difficult thing, and it's even harder when you're going across those categories because, are there efficiencies between J. Alexander's and Krystal? I mean, yes, on the back engine side of things, but you don't want to pull down, one and at the cost of the other. And so, and then we start to, you mingle, because we've got franchisee partners as well, and that's a whole different set of, how you, I'm a people person. I think that building that kind of camaraderie and partnership with that constituency group is hugely vital. But that's a whole different subsection of what the company is about, because different personalities, marketing co-ops, all those different things, innovation, people want to be a part of that. And so it's, that also can be a huge part of this if you're a franchise or non-franchise organization.
Yeah. Krystal and J. Alexander's, two very, very, very different restaurant chains. How are you able to do that? Because that's most of these companies that operate, they usually operate somewhat similar brands, but yeah, those are
they're completely different. And we've tried to keep, Krystal, There are some things that we've utilized in terms of hospitality. I mean J. Alexander's, I don't know the last time you've been in one, but I mean we pride ourselves on that guest experience sets us apart, right? We are one of the leaders in the industry in terms of just understanding how that, and the training is rigorous. And opening new J. Alexander's it's an event, and when that's our growth vehicle right now. I mean, we just opened in Clifton, New Jersey. We're going hot and heavy into Dallas, back into Phoenix, but not losing that is
Right.
We have to be very disciplined. But there are some nuances where we can use that learning and development team on that finer part of hospitality, and you can still teach how to smile better in a drive-through, how to take an order so you're not so clunky, or it sounds like the robot's taking your order. So using some of those things, but you have to put it into the brand, speak for Krystal itself. We do have our culinary team. The same culinary team that's working on J. Alexander's is the same culinary team that's working on some Krystal innovation. So for those guys and gals, I mean, they got to shift gears, because you got 7 ingredients at a Krystal, and 145 at a J. Alexander's. The one thing that we did pull across for Logan's, I do think helped, was taste plate. And so at Jay's every morning at 10 o'clock, so the kitchen manager, the GM, the coaches will all get together. They're tasting all the sauces, getting ready for that day of service. What's the daily specials. And so we did put that into a Logan's where, just talking about, hey, what are we serving? How are the tastes here? Where are temperatures? That's helped on, when we have any sort of health checks that come in as well. So I think just taking a little bit of sprinkling that around helps. But again, stay true to the brand itself. That's key.
All right. Superb. Josh, I really appreciate you joining me this week on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons with some help from our friends at Informa. Artwork by Nico Hines. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. But please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcast producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.
Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque Sustainable Hygiene Solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.